The weapon maintenance bay was supposed to be off-limits to civilians, but there she was. A woman in plain clothes disassembling a Barrett .50 with the kind of expertise that takes years to develop. SEAL Commander Webb watched from the doorway as she cleaned each component with mechanical precision. "Ma'am, you're not authorized to handle that equipment," he called out. She didn't look up, didn't pause in her work. "I know," she replied quietly, continuing to polish the barrel. That's when Webb noticed something that made his blood run cold. The Naval Special Warfare Command facility at Dam Neck, Virginia, operated under protocols so strict that even seasoned military personnel needed multiple clearances just to access the building. The weapon maintenance bay, located in the facility's most secure section, required biometric scanning, keycard authorization, and escort by cleared personnel, which made the presence of an unauthorized civilian all the more impossible. Commander Webb had been heading to his office after a routine briefing when movement in the maintenance bay caught his peripheral vision. Through the reinforced glass window, he could see someone working at one of the specialized tables where only the most sensitive equipment was serviced. Webb stopped, his 15 years of military experience telling him something was very wrong. The woman appeared to be in her early 30s with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore civilian clothes, dark slacks, and a simple white blouse that suggested office work rather than military operations. Her movements as she worked on the disassembled rifle were smooth and practiced, each action deliberate and precise. But it was the weapon itself that made Webb's stomach drop. Even from the doorway, he could recognize the distinctive profile of a Barrett M82 A1.50 caliber sniper system, one of the most restricted weapons in the military arsenal. These rifles weren't just classified, they were compartmentalized, tracked, and monitored with the same attention given to nuclear materials. Webb entered the maintenance bay, his footsteps echoing off the concrete floor. The woman didn't acknowledge his presence, continuing to clean the rifle's bolt with the kind of methodical attention that spoke of deep familiarity with the weapon. "Ma'am, you're not authorized to handle that equipment," Webb called out, his voice carrying the authority that had commanded respect from Navy SEALs in 3 different theaters of operation. She didn't look up, didn't pause in her work. Her hands continued their precise movements, polishing each component to a mirror finish before setting it carefully aside. "I know," she replied quietly, continuing to polish the barrel. The casual admission hit Webb like a physical blow. In his 15 years of military service, he had never encountered someone who openly acknowledged unauthorized access to classified equipment while continuing the very activity they were not permitted to perform. "Then, you need to step away from that weapon immediately and explain how you gained access to this facility." "I walked in," she said, using a specialized tool to clean the rifle's chamber with expert precision. Webb felt his jaw clench. The woman's tone was conversational, almost pleasant, as if they were discussing the weather rather than a serious breach of military security. "Ma'am, this is a restricted area. That weapon requires top-secret clearance and SCI access, yes," she interrupted, still not looking up. "Sensitive compartmented information. I'm familiar with the classification levels." The fact that she knew the terminology for the highest levels of security clearance only made the situation more surreal. Webb quickly scanned the maintenance bay to ensure they were alone, then activated the room's electronic lock to prevent interruption. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows this rifle needs to be perfectly calibrated in the next 4 hours." Webb watched as she began inspecting the weapon's scope with the kind of meticulous attention he'd only seen from master armorers with decades of experience. Her movements were economical, purposeful, and absolutely professional. "That doesn't answer my question." "It's the only answer that matters right now." Webb had dealt with enemy combatants, foreign agents, and uncooperative prisoners of war, but he'd never encountered someone who projected such calm competence while openly defying military authority. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Who are you, and how did you gain access to this weapon?" The woman finally looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they held a steadiness that Webb had only seen in combat veterans who'd operated at the highest levels of classified missions. "Commander Webb," she said, using his name though he hadn't introduced himself, "before you make any calls or sound any alarms, you might want to check the maintenance log for this specific rifle." The fact that she knew his name sent an immediate chill down Webb's spine. He was operating under multiple levels of classification, and his presence at this facility wasn't publicly acknowledged. "How do you know my name?" "The same way I know you've been wondering why this particular Barrett hasn't been properly serviced in 8 months. Webb felt the ground shift beneath him. The woman was right. He had been concerned about the maintenance schedule for several weapons in their inventory, including this specific rifle. But that information was buried in classified reports that required Admiral-level clearance to access. "The maintenance log for this weapon is classified. Terminal 7, access code Delta 77 Alpha," she said, returning her attention to the rifle's trigger mechanism. "Password is your mother's maiden name, followed by the year you graduated from BUDS training." Webb stared at her in shock. The access codes she'd just recited were known to fewer than 6 people in the entire Navy, and they were changed monthly through a protocol that required direct authorization from Naval Special Warfare Command. "That's impossible." "Terminal 7, Commander, check the log." Against every instinct and protocol he'd learned in 15 years of military service, Webb moved to the maintenance bay's computer terminal and entered his access codes. The system accepted his credentials and displayed the main menu for classified weapon systems. He typed in the access code the woman had provided. The system immediately displayed a file he'd never seen before. Barrett M. 8201, Serial 23847, Special Operations Deployment Record. Webb's eyes widened as he read the information on screen. Weapon status, active, classified deployment assigned, user, redacted, service record, 73 confirmed eliminations, maximum engagement range, 3,247 meters, last maintenance, 8 months, 12 days, next scheduled deployment, classified, maintenance, authorization, level 5, clearance required. Webb read the data twice, trying to process what he was seeing. 73 confirmed kills with a maximum range of over 3,200 meters. The longest confirmed sniper kill in modern warfare was just under 3,600 meters, achieved by a Canadian sniper in Afghanistan using similar equipment. But it was the maintenance record that made his blood run cold. The rifle hadn't been properly serviced in over 8 months, yet according to the deployment schedule, it was needed for an operation in the near future. "This is impossible," Webb muttered, though he was beginning to question what was possible anymore. "What's impossible?" the woman asked, continuing her meticulous cleaning routine. "The engagement record for this weapon. No one makes consistent shots at 3,200 meters. The ballistic variables alone. Muzzle velocity 853 meters per second. Bullet drop at 3,247 meters, approximately 68 feet. Wind drift calculation requires real-time atmospheric data," she recited without looking up from her work. "Temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and target movement all factor into the final firing solution." Webb felt the world tilt slightly. She was discussing ballistic calculations at extreme range with the casual precision of someone who had performed these computations countless times under live fire conditions. "You're talking about shots that require mathematical precision beyond what most people consider possible," she finished. "Yes. The user file is completely redacted." "I know. If this is your weapon, then you're someone whose existence is classified at levels above your current clearance," she said calmly. "Someone whose operations are compartmentalized to protect both national security and the individuals involved." Webb stared at the computer screen, then at the woman who was methodically cleaning what was apparently her personal sniper rifle. Everything he thought he understood about military operations, about clearance levels, about who was authorized to operate in this facility, was crumbling. "What's your real name?" "Today I'm Jennifer Walsh, civilian contractor specializing in precision equipment maintenance." She held up a cleaning rod. "Which is exactly what I'm doing." "And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow I'll be whoever needs to be behind this rifle when the shot has to be taken." The cryptic response was clearly all the information he was going to receive. Webb found himself facing a decision that could define the remainder of his military career. He could follow standard protocol, call security, and create an incident that would likely result in congressional hearings and career-ending investigations. Or he could trust his instincts, which were telling him that this woman represented something far beyond his understanding or clearance level. "Jennifer Walsh," he said finally, "for the next few hours. Why are you really here?" Jennifer set down her cleaning supplies and looked at him with those unsettling dark eyes. "Because this rifle needs to be perfect for an operation that officially isn't happening, to eliminate a threat that officially doesn't exist." "What kind of operation?" "The kind where missing the shot means American personnel don't come home." Webb felt a familiar chill, the same sensation he'd experienced before high-risk operations where lives hung in the balance. Jennifer spoke about extreme-range precision shooting with the quiet confidence of someone who had operated at the highest levels of classified missions. "Are you telling me there's a black operation planned that requires—" "I'm telling you that this rifle needs to be ready," she interrupted, "and right now, it's not." Webb watched her resume her detailed maintenance routine, each movement practiced and efficient. She wasn't just cleaning a weapon. She was preparing for something that required absolute precision under impossible conditions. "How long have you been using this specific rifle?" "Long enough to know its ballistic signature under every possible environmental condition. The record shows 73 confirmed eliminations. The record shows what it's allowed to show." The implication was clear. The official count represented only a fraction of her actual operational history. Webb tried to process the reality that he was potentially dealing with one of the most effective snipers in military history, operating under classification levels that made her existence officially deniable. "Jennifer," he said carefully, "I need to understand the scope of what's happening here." "What's happening is equipment maintenance, Commander. Nothing more complex than ensuring this rifle performs exactly as designed when it's needed most. But the operation tomorrow will require someone to make a shot that most people would consider impossible, and when that moment comes, this weapon will be ready." The quiet certainty in her voice was more convincing than any mission briefing or intelligence assessment Webb had ever received. He had spent enough time in combat operations to distinguish between confidence and competence. Jennifer Walsh possessed both in extraordinary measure. "Is there anything I can do to assist?" Jennifer looked up, and for the first time since their encounter began, she smiled. It was a subtle expression, barely visible, but it completely transformed her demeanor. "You can ensure this conversation never happened. And if someone inquires about the rifle maintenance, tell them it was performed by properly authorized personnel." "You're not authorized." "Commander Webb," Jennifer said, returning to her precise work, "authorization is administrative paperwork. Capability is what saves lives." Webb found himself nodding, though he wasn't entirely certain why. Everything about this situation violated every protocol he'd learned in 15 years of military service, but something deeper than regulations was telling him to trust this enigmatic woman. "The 3,200-meter shot," he said after a moment, "is that actually achievable?" Jennifer paused in her cleaning, holding a component up to examine it for microscopic imperfections. "At 3,247 meters, through variable crosswinds, with a target moving at inconsistent speeds across uneven terrain, accounting for altitude differential, temperature gradient, and atmospheric density." She set the component down and met his gaze directly. It was the only solution that prevented a diplomatic catastrophe. "Jesus." "Divine intervention wasn't available that day," Jennifer replied with understated humor, "so I had to handle the situation personally." Despite the gravity of their conversation, Webb found himself laughing. The tension that had been building since he first discovered her began to ease, replaced by professional respect for someone who could maintain composure while discussing impossible military operations. "How many people know about your actual capabilities?" "As few as operationally necessary." "And how many people need to know?" "Even fewer." Webb nodded, understanding the implicit requirement for absolute discretion. Whatever Jennifer Walsh's true identity and operational history were, they required the kind of compartmentalization that could only be maintained through strict limitation of access. "The mission tomorrow," he said, "will it be high risk?" "Commander, everything I do involves risk levels that would terrify most people. Tomorrow simply represents a higher degree of complexity than usual." "For you personally?" "For everyone whose lives depend on my accuracy." Jennifer began reassembling the Barrett with the same fluid precision she'd used to dismantle it. Webb watched, fascinated by the speed and efficiency of her movements. Each component fit into place with mechanical perfection, the result of countless hours of practice and intimate familiarity with the weapon system. The reassembly process revealed the true extent of her expertise. She didn't just know how the rifle functioned, she understood its mechanical soul. Every adjustment was made with the precision of someone who had fired thousands of rounds through this exact weapon, someone who knew how temperature changes affected barrel harmonics, how different ammunition lots performed under varying atmospheric conditions. "You know," Webb said, "in 15 years of military service, I've never encountered anyone with your level of capabilities. Most people haven't. Is that intentional? That's survival." The rifle was nearly complete now, transformed from scattered components back into a precision instrument capable of reaching out and touching targets at distances most people couldn't even see clearly. Jennifer worked without consulting any technical manual or reference guide. Every specification was permanently stored in her memory. As she made final adjustments to the scope mounting system, Webb noticed something that had escaped his attention earlier. Her hands bore the subtle calluses and scars that marked a professional operator. Trigger fingers slightly flattened from countless hours of shooting, small cuts on her knuckles from field stripping weapons under adverse conditions, the kind of hands that belonged to someone who lived by precision and preparation. "Jennifer, can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask. Do you ever question the psychological cost of what you do?" Jennifer paused, her hand stilling on the rifle's stock. For a moment, Webb saw something vulnerable in her expression, a brief glimpse of the human being beneath the professional operator facade. "Every time I pull the trigger," she said quietly. "But questioning the cost doesn't change the necessity." "And what makes tomorrow necessary?" "Someone who threatens American interests needs to be permanently removed from the equation." The cold precision of her statement reminded Webb exactly who he was dealing with. Jennifer Walsh might appear to be a civilian contractor, but she was a weapon as finely calibrated as the Barrett rifle she was preparing. "Will you be safe?" "Safety isn't a luxury people in my position can afford." "But you'll complete the mission successfully?" Jennifer looked at him with an expression that combined gratitude and sadness. "Commander Webb, people like me don't measure success by survival. We measure it by mission completion and the lives we save by taking the shot others can't make." The rifle was fully assembled now, appearing exactly as it had when Webb first spotted Jennifer working on it. But he knew it was fundamentally different, calibrated, adjusted, and prepared for whatever impossible task awaited it. "Is there anything else you require?" Webb asked. "Just your discretion and your trust." "You have both." Jennifer stood, shouldering the Barrett's carrying case with practiced ease. The complete weapon system weighed over 30 pounds, but she handled it as if it were an extension of her own body. "Commander Webb," she said, extending her hand. He shook it, noting the calluses that indicated extensive weapons training and the steady grip that conveyed absolute confidence under pressure. "Jennifer Walsh," he replied, "it's been a privilege meeting you." "The privilege was mine." "And Jennifer?" "Yes? Make the shot count." She smiled again, that same subtle expression that hinted at depths and experiences he would never fully comprehend. "Every shot counts, Commander. Tomorrow's just happens to count for more than most." With that statement, she turned and walked toward the maintenance bay exit, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to operating in shadows and classified spaces. Webb watched until she disappeared beyond the security checkpoint, leaving him alone with questions that would never receive official answers. He returned to the computer terminal and reviewed the rifle's service record one final time. 73 confirmed eliminations, maximum engagement range, 3,247 meters. Statistics that represented lives ended and missions completed by someone whose existence was officially classified beyond acknowledgement. Webb closed the file and initiated the security protocol that would erase all access records for this session. Whatever Jennifer Walsh was planning for tomorrow, whatever impossible shot she might need to make, it would happen without any official documentation or recognition. But he would remember. He would carry the memory of a woman who maintained a rifle like a sacred ritual and discussed 3,200-meter shots as routine operational requirements. 36 hours later, international news would report the elimination of a high-value terrorist target during a failed attack on American diplomatic personnel. The reports would credit Coalition Special Operations Forces and provide no details about how the elimination had been achieved from an impossible distance under impossible conditions. Webb would watch the news coverage and think about a woman named Jennifer Walsh, who didn't officially exist, carrying a rifle that had never been deployed, making shots that defied mathematical probability. And he would classify this encounter alongside all the other compartmentalized experiences that defined military service at the highest levels of national security. Some secrets were worth protecting. Some people were worth shielding, even when protecting them meant pretending they had never existed at all. In the official maintenance log, the entry for that day would show routine service performed by authorized personnel. No names, no details, no trace of the conversation that had fundamentally altered Webb's understanding of the invisible operations conducted in defense of American interests. Jennifer Walsh would join the ranks of ghost stories whispered among special operations personnel. The sniper who could make impossible shots, who appeared and disappeared like smoke, who carried secrets that could never be shared. And somewhere in the world, a Barrett .50 caliber rifle would be waiting for the next time someone needed to reach out and eliminate a threat at 3,200 meters. Because some problems could only be solved from very, very far away, by someone who officially had never been there at all. The weapon would rest in secure storage, maintained to perfection, ready for the next impossible mission that would never appear in any official record, carried out by operators whose names were written in classified ink on documents that would be destroyed the moment their missions were complete. In the shadows of national security, some stories were never meant to be told, and some heroes were never meant to be known. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.